Wow, we really had some interesting reactions to our interview with US conservative commentator Candace Owens last week. Most of you said it was fairly balanced. Others said I wasn't tough enough on her over the allegations of anti-Semitism.
I've landed on the wrong side of that issue. I've critiqued, God forbid, you critique Bibi Netanyahu and his actions. You will just meet the full swing of the mainstream media. And I have stood up to these lobbying groups. And like you saw, the Zionist Federation of America, who are effectively just trying to bully people into their perspectives. And their perspective is that you can't critique anything Bibi does. And as a Christian, I am not comfortable with the amount of child death that is happening in Palestine right now.
Some commenters have said that Candace downplayed the extent of her recent anti-Jewish commentary. She says her comments, though, were taken out of context. Frankly, I just wanted to keep the focus on the Australian story, which is that our government and our opposition think it's just fine to deny a celebrity or anyone a visa to tour Australia purely on the basis of their political views. That, in and of itself, never mind the issue, that is a disgrace. And any nation that does that really can't call itself free. We are a nanny state if we can't let our own public adults make their own minds up about visiting political speakers. And if we're too immature to make up our own minds about stuff. And I'm frankly sick of the government treating us all like children and running the country like it's a high school. Candace Owens is not an expert on the Middle East either. She made her name because of her stance on BLM, Black Lives Matter, and African American issues, and I still respect her for her work in that area. In any case, it probably is time to check in again on the Israel-Gaza war. Surprisingly, there are other commentators more suited to speak on that topic who've been following it closely since the beginning and the wider issues of that situation in the Middle East for decades. Piers Morgan's online show was back from summer break this week, and his first guest for the new season was popular author and commentator Douglas Murray. And their discussion on the war was wide-ranging and insightful, and it touched on a lot of the issues that people have been concerned about. There have been huge protests and a general strike in Israel this week against the government of Benjamin Netanyahu after the murder of 6 Israeli hostages by Hamas. Their bodies were recovered after IDF forces raided a tunnel near the city of Rafah. It's believed that they were murdered just as the IDF were closing in to rescue them, after almost a year in captivity. The horror of that sparked an understandable rage and frustration among Israelis. The protesters were angry that the Prime Minister hadn't done a peace deal with Hamas and already brought all the remaining hostages home.
Nobody can be particularly surprised by now about the brutality of Hamas, but I think still people are shocked. I think everyone's shocked that they would be holding on to hostages for almost a year in tunnels underground, making them undergo who knows what amount of torture and deprivation, only then to kill them maybe hours before they were going to be rescued by the IDF. One of them was an American citizen as well. I think there's a lot of questions in America about how it could be that an American citizen could be held hostage and then brutally executed like this.
The interview covers many details that we don't have time to go into on this show, but I strongly recommend watching the full thing over on the Piers Morgan Uncensored channel.
And Hamas are a terror organisation, and I've completely concurred with you from the start of this that what they did on October the 7th was of such a heinous scale that Israel obviously had to respond with massive force as they've done. But you'll also be aware, as we head towards the first anniversary of what happened there, that this is an ongoing, increasing, massive problem worldwide for Israel and its reputation, because so many people, including the UK now under Labour government, they've just announced, as we're talking, they're going to suspend some arms sales to Israel. 30 of 350 licenses will be suspended due to a clear risk the weapons will be used by Israel in a way that could breach international law. So there is increasing pressure, as you know, around the world for this to get resolved. Increasing views expressed by many countries that what Israel's now doing it constitutes a war crime, and you and I have debated that many times. But do you not feel that something has to give here, that this has to get resolved somehow, and that the only way to do that is, as with all these situations, you have to eventually compromised in some way. And the problem for Netanyahu is that people think he is completely incapable of offering Hamas any compromise.
But there again, if I can say so, Piers, it's the same thing, which is the presumption that it's Netanyahu who is uncompromising. We end up with this, again, because Netanyahu is a democratically elected leader, and so it's assumed that some pressure can be brought to bear on him. In my view, it is not Netanyahu who's uncompromising. It's Hamas that's uncompromising. They could have handed back the hostages last October. They could have not done this. I mean, they could have tried to build a state since 2005 when Israel withdrew from the Gaza and handed the place over to them. Hamas could have used the billions of dollars and pounds and euros that British and European and American taxpayers gave them since 2006. They could have used those billions of dollars to build up Gaza. They could have made a booming, in the good sense of the term, Mediterranean paradise. They could have created wealth for their people. But you know what they did? They built down instead of upwards. They built a tunnel network bigger than the London Underground for all of those years, and they squirreled away the money, just like Yasser Arafat did before them, and they made themselves rich.
Douglas Murray told Piers Morgan that the Hamas leadership are worth billions of dollars and are living in luxury in Doha with their families because they don't want peace or to build a thriving state for the Palestinian people. They just want to destroy Israel.
They have said themselves they want to use Palestinian children and their lives in order to pressurize the world. These are fanatics. They want the death of their own citizens. In order to get world opinion turned against Israel. Again, how do you negotiate with that? The assumption always is in the West today, because we're so sort of fat and lazy in our expectation that peace is the norm and that historically it's the norm. We're so full of our own expectations and presumptions that we always think that wars end by some kind of compromise and coming around the table, to use the cliche. They don't. Historically, most wars end because one side wins and one side loses. And one of the reasons, in my view, why there is this endless rounds of war in this region is because the Israelis are never allowed to win, and Hamas, in this case, are always allowed to draw. And I think that that is simply to set up the precursor for the next conflict. If Hamas come out of this with a fighting capability, then there will be another round of this war in a couple of years. So when David Lammy and others say what we need to have is a peace deal, I'd say on what terms? Everybody wants peace except for Hamas and the fanatics. Everybody else wants peace. All of these people in the south, these kibbutzniks and the party goers and others who were murdered on the 7th, all dreamed of peace with their Palestinian neighbors and brothers and sisters. Who stopped that peace being possible? Hamas, from 2005 and again to this very day.
That's author and commentator Douglas Murray speaking with Piers Morgan on Piers Morgan Uncensored this week. Great interview. Make sure you catch it. Piers has been hitting some goals this week. He also had an interview after that one, a couple of days later, with Candace Owens and Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Rabbi Shmuley was something to watch in that interview. It was a complete train wreck for him. And Candace held her own against those claims of anti-Semitism. I strongly recommend watching that one as well. Closer to home, Albo's Minister for Home Affairs and Minister for Immigration, Tony Burke, the man who can protect us from scary 35-year-old American mums who are conservative political commentators like Candace. But he doesn't seem to see that 3,000 Gazan refugees pose any threat whatsoever to our country. That bloke. I mean, at least ASIO's chief, Mike Burgess, after saying it was okay to stay here if you support Hamas a week or so ago, has this week clarified his position. He's now made the criteria clear. He says you're a risk to the security of Australia if you support Hamas, if you support the October 7 terror attacks, or if you support the destruction of the State of Israel. I'm so glad he finally cleared that one up. But does Albo's government even care? It's Minister Burke who's really in charge. How on earth can Burke assure anyone that the people who've been granted tourist visas have all met that criteria? It needs to be a routine part of the procedure, as the Dutton's opposition Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Patterson pointed out this week, that every applicant coming to Australia from Gaza on a tourist visa should be automatically referred to ASIO for that security clearance along those criteria. The fact that this is not already happening and hasn't happened for the first 1,000 or so arrivals is an absolute dereliction of duty on the part of the Albanese government. And I know everyone speaks very highly of Mike Burgess, but ASIO's very lacklustre performance in all of this also shouldn't go unnoticed by concerned Australians. With all the government crackdown on freedom of speech and digital IDs and marketing companies manipulating your information, you would be crazy not to have a virtual private network on your laptop and phone. In fact, all of your devices. I was once a bit afraid of how these things work, that they might, slow down my internet speed or be too complicated to set up. But private internet access is terrific. And when you buy from them, you're supporting the other side too, because they're one of our sponsors. So to help keep yourself safe from big government and big corporations with a VPN, get onto private internet access. We have done a fantastic deal just for other side viewers. You're going to get 83% off the usual price and 4 months free. That brings it down to just $2.68 a month, a half a cup of coffee. It's amazing. You just got to use the special access code that you can see on your screen right now. That is piavpn.com. piavpn.com/other side, and you'll get that discount if you do that, okay? It's super easy to download, super easy to get running, literally just takes a few minutes, and it's always on. It didn't slow down my internet speed one bit. And a side benefit is that I can now watch Netflix using my Netflix account as if I'm in any country in the world, which opens up the whole global Netflix library to me. And best of all, by using PIA, you're supporting the other side in a very big way and helping us to keep on providing an alternative to the mainstream media focused on Aussie news. piavpn.com/other side. Get on it. If you like that clip, there's more where that came from in our full show, The Other Side. You can watch it right here, the latest episode. And please subscribe to our channel by pressing the subscribe button right here or down here. And remember to click that notification bell too. It all helps. Join us and become part of The Other Side.